This person is so focused on how the two of you balance each other out. And with the energy of strength, it feels like they really appreciate you for bringing out the best in them. This is somebody who has had to become very courageous very quickly in order to not give in to a defeatist attitude that this connection between the two of you was going to end up just like other disappointments they have had in the past. This is somebody who has exerted a huge amount of energy in not listening to their inner critic and remaining very present, very optimistic, very grounded in this connection with you. It feels like certain fears have surfaced almost in a way that they didn't expect them to. Like just when things were going really well, all of a sudden this person is panicked on more than one occasion. But they feel very empowered and very certain that you are the person that they want to be with in a long-term sense. And so it feels like this is somebody that has made like a series of split-second decisions to hold on to you for dear life, to not fall into a pattern of self-sabotage, as may have been the case at other points in their life. Actively, in your presence and without you even knowing it, this is somebody who has been closing out timelines of lack through what it takes in order to remain as open as possible to you, to the reality of your situation with one another, and looking towards the future with hope and optimism rather than worry or planning for the worst case scenario. So it's like you have brought the best out of this person without ultimatums, without putting pressure upon them to be anything other than who they are. This is somebody who has been quietly fighting to be right there by your side on their good days, and most importantly on the days that are not so good for them, when those fears kick in, when a tendency to kind of question if this is just an illusion, is it too good to be true, are they reading too much into, the connection, the chemistry, the experiences between the two of you. This is somebody who keeps pushing away those doubts, everything that they have. This is somebody who wants to almost kind of like share with you the progress that they have made so far quietly behind the scenes, but they don't want to create worry within you that might cause you to kind of miss out on feeling, really good about where the connection is. This is somebody who doesn't want to create like burdens for you or, unnecessary stress or worry. So they're trying to kind of like take care of that bit of insecurity like behind the scenes. This is somebody who keeps showing up for this connection, even in the days when they need to kind of like take a step away, like maybe they make up excuses. Oh, they got a lot going on. They've got a lot of things that they're doing after work, so they aren't going to really be able to like talk for very long or at all. They may have told you that on a couple of occasions, and it feels like some of that was just sort of, it was a little white lie, but it feels like it's the kind of thing that, they were honoring that need within themselves to kind of just sit in the stillness, sit in an energy of introspection, not being out like talking to other people, seeing what other options are out there. But there are times where this person has felt very overwhelmed with a sense of almost feeling that like someday this beautiful connection that is happening between the two of you, that you'd wake up one day, see them for who they are, which is different from like the person that you're falling in love with, the person that they're showing up as, and that you decide to kind of like withdraw your love, kind of take that elsewhere. That fear has surfaced for them, and it feels like they have done an excellent job in confronting that very quietly within, and then returning to your presence, returning to, this very kind of like upbeat experience between the two of you, giving of themselves, even in times where they're just like holding space for you to be in the fullness of who you are blossoming into in the midst of this connection. This is somebody who you'd be very proud of them if you understood the full magnitude of just how much they have been fighting that kind of like urge to run on more than one occasion. They have taken care of a certain element of a pattern inside of them that had been prone to self-sabotage because of heartbreaks in the past where their illusion was shattered very suddenly and without warning by previous partners, perhaps many of them. So it's taking a lot of strength on this person's part to trust in this connection at face value, to, again, like not listen to that inner critic or those fears within that, would encourage them to kind of second guess things, or, detach completely, or do certain things in order to upend the beautiful experience between the two of you, because this person really feels like you're a really good fit for who they are presently, and also for what they imagine their future will look like. We also have the Nine of Swords. Yeah, so the idea of like losing you specifically because of something that they do or that they say, that maybe kind of like a fear response, or like a reflex, in opposition to the closeness that you're building. This is something that this person is like actively looking at. They're very aware of that tendency inside of themselves. They know that this is kind of part of their shadow. It's a trait within them that they don't necessarily appreciate, like, or enjoy, but it feels like this is somebody that has become aware of that on some level prior to meeting you. And it has surfaced on more than one occasion in this connection so far. And so this person has like grabbed the bull by the horns, and they are not letting the past repeat itself in this situation with you. They're not letting those fear-based thoughts, that sense of panic, the fear of like the rug being pulled out from under them, they're not allowing that to kind of like dissuade them from continuing to show up in this connection, continuing to follow their heart. They are not listening to the logical mind at this point, because unlike, if you've ever heard like when people say, oh, my heart's a fool, I don't listen to that. This is somebody that is like, no, my mind is a fool, and like leads me astray, leads me off on these wild goose chases where I get into overthinking, I stumble into paranoia. I look at kind of good experiences and see red flags where that doesn't actually exist. Like this person is aware of that tendency within. They've achieved that level of self-mastery prior to coming into contact with you. And so this is somebody that is utilizing those tools that they've kind of fashioned for themselves prior to your arrival. They are actively wielding those tools at this particular point in time in order to be able to defeat that kind of like self-saboteur that lives within, that inner critic that in instances of love and connection, and as this person has noticed for themselves when things are going like really well, when there's no reason to be anything other than like perfectly comfortable in situations, that's when this person like has a tendency to sort of like look around, sleep with one eye open, kind of like fear that they are overlooking something that they should be seeing. And so again, if this person kind of like disconnects from time to time, yeah, sometimes that may be like a valid excuse. They might really be busy, or they're going out with their friends, or doing something like that. But it feels like so far on a couple of occasions, this is somebody who is just like, they felt that fear kind of kick in. They made up some kind of excuse, but rather than that being something where they then distracted themselves, it's like that excuse for not being able to connect with you, or they had to get off the phone pretty quickly, or they were busy that night. This person then spent that time in between that period and like the next contact with you. They spent that time doing that shadow work. They spent that time looking in the mirror and confronting that fear-based paradigm. So this is somebody that is actively breaking down those walls, those barriers within, because they want to show up as the best version of themselves. You motivate them to do that. This is somebody who is evolving beyond historical patterns and tendencies within, and it is all inspired by the way in which they feel about you and how important this connection is. We also have the Knight of Pentacles. Yeah, so this is somebody that, they're moving as quickly as they can at this particular kind of like stage of your dynamic with one another, but it feels like this is also somebody that is going through a process of personal growth, transformation, and evolution. They are putting into practice in this connection with you certain strategies that they had learned about to try and combat that self-sabotaging tendency within. Things that they had researched, that they had kind of like looked into. They'd studied up on this. They had recognized that as a pattern within themselves from previous connections or like talking stages, people they were dating, like other circumstances of the past that created this woundedness within that they were kind of like forced to or chose to sort of recognize at some point was the residual effect of certain disappointments they had experienced. This is somebody who, brought in a level of self-awareness instead of just a whole kind of box of woundedness. And so this is somebody that, is very motivated to continue to show up for you. But in order to do that, they have to put that intention into action. And it feels like that they are doing that actively by addressing that woundedness every time it comes up, addressing that fear, not burdening you with that or expecting you to be the one to fix that or just sort of accept that about themselves. But this is somebody that is like, again, facing their own reflection, doing that shadow work, kind of like talking themselves off that ledge, off that instinct to kind of like say something, do something, ghost, run away completely in a way that would just sort of collapse everything that you have with one another. This is somebody who wants to keep reaching for you, reaching for this connection. So, be patient with this person at the times where, in your instinct, your intuition might be like, they're telling me something that seems very, just kind of mundane, very legitimate, but it seems like they're not exactly telling the truth. There are times where this person is definitely kind of like making up their busyness. They're not like legitimately kind of, oh, I'm going to be so busy, I'm going to be out with other people. This is somebody that might even have like a particular kind of modality that they use. It may like have some kind of like motivational speaker that they are inspired by, like a certain program that they have worked, or even something very spiritual in nature that has helped them to kind of like understand this pattern within and kind of like get a handle on it. And they might not share the exact process with you, but this is definitely somebody that isn't just making up excuses to go and sort of see if the grass is greener elsewhere. And the times where they kind of like, abruptly switch gears with you, or, kind of like have to step away from the connection for a minute. This is somebody that is definitely like making sure that when they return towards you and you resume your normal contact with one another, the next day or like a couple days later or whatever, and you're back on in the conversation. This is somebody who's done a lot of building behind the scenes. They have done a lot of muzzling that inner critic. This is somebody who, if you could track the progress between like when you first met this person and what they've had to kind of like overcome inside of themselves, up to this point in time, you would see that growth, you would see that progress, you would be very proud and very impressed with them. But this may be somebody that's also very humble or very protective over this connection. So they're not just going to sit there and kind of like, virtue signal. They're not going to sit there and, kind of like share all of that with you so that you'll congratulate them and, kind of like feed into their ego, because it feels like this is somebody that is just kind of like doing this because they are very motivated to be present with you, to not just kind of offer themselves up and say, this is who I am, take it or leave it. But this is somebody that is recognizing like, they're human, they have flaws, and instead of just like that's part of the deal with them, this is somebody who's working on that aspect of these flaws every time that they surface in this situation with you. So this is somebody, it feels like, that is very devoted to kind of like future potentials with you. And that act of devotion most strongly at this point in time involves kind of like behind the scenes work within themselves to sort of neutralize that tendency to kind of, do things or say things that, would sort of dismantle beautiful experiences. They don't want that to happen with you. They've recognized that as kind of a pattern within. And so this is somebody that's in the midst of breaking that pattern. So those are your messages. I hope that they resonated with you and that you enjoyed the reading. Like or comment to claim these energies. Subscribe to my channel if you would like to see more content that I put out here. Don't forget to hit the bell button to get notifications every time I post a new video. And if you would like to book a personal reading with me, I offer those through my Etsy shop, and there's a link for that below. I hope to see you again in another reading. Please take care and be well.